The Grand Orpheus restaurant shimmered in soft amber light, chandeliers dripping crystal like frozen rain, while a string quartet threaded melodies between clinking glasses. At table 9, 3 men in tailored suits leaned close around a woman in a gray coat, her breath shallow, eyes darting for exits. The largest of them pulled out a chair, his grin stretched thin as a knife. "Let's keep this between us," he murmured. From the bar, a man in work-worn clothes shifted forward, grease stains on his jacket sleeve, a red thread looped tight around his wrist. He wasn't supposed to matter here, not among polished shoes and whispered deals, but he placed a chipped porcelain spoon gently onto their table, the gesture so ordinary it carried an edge of menace. "Wrong table, wrong day, gentlemen." The room froze. "Who are you?" the brute demanded. "A father," the stranger replied. Evan Hale had grown used to being invisible. At 35, he lived in the quiet cracks between other people's emergencies, the man you never noticed until something broke. Automatic doors stuck open in hotel lobbies, ovens that refused to light in bustling kitchens, gas sensors that triggered false alarms in the middle of the night. He was the one they called. He was the one who carried a toolbox and clipboard instead of a briefcase, who wore steel-toe boots instead of polished leather shoes. His daughter Lily called him a fixer of broken things. Not just machines, not just pipes, things. She was 7 years old and believed her daddy could repair anything, as long as he had patience and a steady hand. Every morning, before school, she would fold a paper crane from whatever scrap of paper she could find, receipts, junk mail, worksheets from the night before, and slip it into the breast pocket of his jacket. "For safe travels, Daddy," she always said, and then she would tie a thin strand of red cotton thread around his wrist, pulling the knot tight with her small fingers. "So you remember," she whispered, "to breathe slow when things get scary." That thread was there tonight, soft against his pulse, as he stood inside the glowing heart of the Grand Orpheus restaurant, clipboard tucked under his arm. He'd brought Lily along, something he rarely did, because tomorrow's kitchen repair schedule needed to be finalized, and the only way to do that was meeting the night manager in person. Lily sat near the emergency exit, folding napkins into cranes, her tongue poking from the corner of her mouth in concentration. The Orpheus was the kind of place where chandeliers dripped light like molten gold, where violin strings hummed above hushed conversations, where people in $1,000 suits never looked twice at the man who kept their stoves from exploding. Evan felt out of place, as he always did, but he'd learned to accept it. He was part of the furniture here, seen but not really seen. Still, his trained eye never stopped noticing. The emergency exit near Lily's table didn't latch properly. He could hear the soft catch of a faulty mechanism from 20 feet away. The sprinkler head above the flambe station was caked with grease, useless in the event of fire. He took photos on his phone, a habit that had saved his clients more fines than they cared to admit. Details mattered. Details kept people safe. Details had failed his wife Sarah. She died 3 years ago in a boarding house fire. Faulty wiring, no working sprinklers, windows painted shut to save on maintenance costs. Ravenfield Holdings, the company that owned the building, had cut corners until lives were buried under ash. The officials called it a tragedy. Evan called it a crime. Since then, every overlooked hazard felt personal. Every crooked sign of negligence reminded him of the price already paid. He'd chosen a quieter life after Sarah's death, leaving behind the dangerous work he once did, work most people knew nothing about. Now he fixed kitchens instead of conflicts, but old instincts never fully died. Tonight, as he finished reviewing the maintenance notes, something else caught his attention. Not the sprinkler, not the exit door, not the disdainful glance of the maitre d', who clearly wished Evan would vanish into the back. No, this was different. At table 12, 3 men in black suits had arranged themselves around a single woman in a gray coat. Their movements were precise, deliberate. They had chosen their seats carefully, angling their bodies to block the overhead camera's view. The biggest of them wore a wireless earpiece, the kind meant to blend in but didn't escape Evan's notice. His left jacket sleeve bulged with something rigid, too sharp, too square to be a phone. The woman sat with her palms flat on the table, as though bracing herself to flee. Her eyes flickered from side to side, searching for exits, for allies, for anything but the cage these men had built with their bodies. Evan's chest tightened. He knew that look. He'd seen it in refugee camps, in checkpoints, in back-alley negotiations when the balance of power was tilted and survival hinged on a single wrong glance. He hadn't wanted to see it again. Not here. Not in front of Lily. He looked toward his daughter. She was still folding, but when she glanced up and caught his gaze, she pressed both palms flat on the table. Their silent signal. It meant, "I'm watching you, Daddy." He breathed slowly, feeling the tug of the red thread against his wrist. His fingers found the chipped porcelain spoon from the bar setup, a nervous habit, something to fidget with, something that grounded him when he needed absolute calm, fragile, fractured, but still useful in the right hands. The woman in gray glanced around one last time, her eyes begging for help that wasn't coming. The restaurant hummed on, silverware clinking, violin notes drifting, everyone else buried in their own conversations. People saw, but they didn't see. They looked, but they didn't act. Everyone except Evan. He slid the clipboard under his arm, squared his shoulders, and stood. The glow of the chandeliers bathed him in gold as he stepped toward table 12, the red thread glinting faintly in the light. He felt Lily's eyes on his back, steady and unblinking. This was not his fight, but it had just become his responsibility. The air thickened as Evan closed the distance to table 12. Every step felt louder than the violin strings that tried to soften the evening. He wasn't a man of grand entrances. He preferred slipping through service hallways, unnoticed. But tonight, his presence was undeniable. The biggest man at the table tilted his head, the grin never touching his eyes. "You're lost, friend," he said, his voice gravel under velvet. "This isn't your table." Evan placed the cracked spoon gently on the linen, the porcelain catching light like a blade. His voice was calm, quiet, but carried farther than expected. "Wrong table, wrong day, gentlemen." The entire room seemed to exhale at once, startled. Forks paused mid-air. Conversations faltered. Even the quartet stumbled on a note. The brute narrowed his eyes. "Who the hell are you?" Evan's answer was simple, stripped bare. "A father. That's enough." The woman in gray inhaled sharply, relief flickering in her eyes for the first time. But the men weren't swayed. They exchanged subtle glances, the language of professionals who'd practiced this dance 1,000 times. The brute leaned closer, his laugh a scrape of metal. "You're in the wrong place. Go back to your tools, kitchen boy." His hand clamped heavy on Evan's shoulder. The weight was meant to intimidate, to force retreat. But Evan had shifted his stance before the hand even landed, moving pressure away from nerves that could immobilize him. Subtle, controlled. He let the man believe he had grip, when in truth he held nothing. From the corner, Lily pressed her palms against the table again, steadying him with their silent code. "Breathe slow, stay calm." The woman's voice trembled. I don't know them," she stammered, her name badge half hidden beneath her coat. "Nadia Lynn, a journalist." Evan filed it away instinctively. He tilted the spoon slightly, angling it like a mirror. In its reflection, he caught sight of the third man, sliding subtly to block the secondary exit near the restrooms. A neat trap, professional, choreographed. Evan's pulse remained steady. He'd seen this kind of choreography before, in rooms where outcomes were measured in silence and blood. But he spoke not to them, but to the room at large, his words deliberately loud enough to reach surrounding tables. "She said she doesn't know you." Laughter, sharp and mocking, burst from the suits. "Look at yourself," the brute sneered. "Grease on your jacket, boots from a worksite. You don't belong here. Go fix a sink." Nearby diners chuckled nervously, smirking at the class divide. But one woman at the next table raised her phone, camera already streaming. "Oh my God," she whispered to her followers. "Some maintenance guy thinks he's a hero." The live chat on her screen exploded. "Stay out of it. This is crazy." Or, "Wait, maybe he's serious." The maitre d' appeared, his smile stretched thin. "Sir, please, maintain decorum. These are VIP guests." His cuff bore fresh ink stains, his watch on the wrong wrist. Evan saw it immediately. Someone had bought his cooperation. VIPs who block cameras and exits? Evan countered, his tone calm but sharp enough to cut through the murmur of the dining room. "Makes people wonder what kind of conversation needs that much privacy." The live streamer zoomed in, her follower count climbing by the second. The brute tightened his grip. "Smart men walk away. And fathers don't," Evan replied evenly. The words landed heavier than fists. Nadia Lynn looked at him with sudden intensity. Recognition. "Wait, did you work with Greyline?" The name hit like a stone in still water, sending ripples across the table. Evan's hand stilled on the spoon. Greyline. A past he had buried. The brute's eyes narrowed. What the hell is Greyline? But the seed was planted. Murmurs spread. Greyline meant something. To some, everything. "I'm nobody," Evan said softly. "Just someone who fixes what's broken. Then fix yourself out of this." The brute growled. He snapped his fingers. The other two closed in, shadowing Nadia. She clutched her purse tighter. One man's hand darted toward it. She jerked back. "Give us what you took," the brute said, his smile gone, voice dropping to a threat. "The Ravenfield files." The name made Evan's blood freeze. Ravenfield, the company that had killed Sarah. Nadia's voice cracked but didn't break. "I don't have anything." "Yes you do," the brute said. "USB drive. Documents. You don't want us to take it by force." The live streamer's voice trembled as she narrated to her swelling audience. This is insane. He's really standing up to them." Evan rolled the spoon between his fingers, feeling the hairline crack beneath his thumb. Fragile things could still serve a purpose. He looked toward Lily. She pressed her hands to her chest this time, their sign for breathe deep, stay calm. The red thread tightened around his wrist as he drew in a slow breath. His voice was steady, deliberate.
carrying not just to the 3 men, but to every witness. "Here's how this goes," he said. "The lady walks to the bar, you stay seated, and we wait for the police to sort out who belongs where." The brute's smile widened again, predatory. "The police? You called them?" "Not yet," Evan said. He pulled out his phone, tapped speaker, and began to dial. "But I'm about to." And that's when everything unraveled. The brute lunged. His companions moved to grab Nadia. The restaurant gasped, phones lifting higher. The live stream count soared. Evan hadn't wanted this fight, but it had already begun. The brute's hand shot toward Evan's throat, fast and heavy, the kind of move meant to end things quickly. But Evan wasn't there anymore. He shifted to the balls of his feet, body loosening as old training woke in his muscles. The cracked porcelain spoon became an extension of his hand. With a subtle twist, he pressed the spoon's edge against a pressure point between the brute's wrist bones. Not hard enough to break, just precise enough to make the man's hand collapse, fingers useless. The brute staggered back, cursing, clutching his numb hand. Gasps rippled through the dining room. "What did he just do?" someone whispered. The second man lunged for Nadia. Evan grabbed the nearest cloth napkin, twisting it into a rope with practiced ease. A step to the side, a gentle pull, and the man's arm was trapped, wrist tied cleanly to a chair leg. He strained, but the improvised restraint held firm. The live stream exploded. "This can't be real." He tied him with a napkin. "Who is this guy?" The third man was already reaching inside his jacket. Evan was faster. He snatched the long strip of receipt paper curling from the payment terminal. With 3 rapid twists, he bound the man's thumb to his index finger, locking the hand into compliance. Pain sharp enough to force stillness. "Non-lethal," Evan muttered under his breath. "Control with minimum force." Nadia stared at him, eyes wide. You're Evan Hale, Greyline Diplomatic Security Program." The name silenced the room. Even the violins stuttered to a halt. A diner whispered, "Greyline? That's embassy security." "Not just embassy security," Nadia said, her voice trembling with recognition. "He wrote the Calm First training manual, the man who taught conflict de-escalation in high-risk zones. He was their lead instructor." Phones shot up across the room. The live stream ticked past 10,000, then 20. The brute flexed his numb fingers, eyes narrowing with new understanding. "You're the one who disappeared. After the fire. The Chinatown boarding house." Evan's jaw tightened. He hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in years. The fire that killed Sarah. The night everything ended. Nadia pulled a USB drive from her purse and held it up for the cameras. "That fire was Ravenfield Holdings, the same company I've been investigating. These men were sent to silence me because I have proof, financial records, safety violations, bribery." The room erupted in whispers. Evan's voice was steady but carried to every corner. "Ravenfield owned the building where my wife died. No sprinklers, no alarms, cut corners to save profit. They called it tragedy. It was murder by negligence." The brute sneered, though sweat beaded at his temple. "You think one man changes anything? Ravenfield doesn't care about you. They'll bury this." Across the room, Lily had stopped folding cranes. She pressed both hands over her chest, eyes locked on her father. "Breathe deep. Stay calm." Evan rolled the spoon between his fingers. "You're right. One man doesn't change everything, but truth does, and the truth's about to spread further than you can stop." The live streamer zoomed in on the USB drive, her voice breathless. "This is insane. He's connecting it all live. The maintenance guy is actually..." The brute roared and lunged again, fury drowning caution. Evan let him come. Timing, not strength, was everything. He shifted sideways, redirected the man's weight, and guided him down with the same calm he'd once taught diplomats. De-escalate with control, not destruction. The brute slammed against the table, silverware scattering. His companions were still bound, one sweating as circulation pinched, the other snarling through clenched teeth. Nadia clutched the USB tighter. "This contains a decade of evidence," she said, her voice strengthening with each word. "Bribes to inspectors, fire marshals bought off, slums disguised as affordable housing. Ravenfield has blood on its hands." The live stream chat surged like wildfire. "Save the video. He's a hero. This is bigger than we thought." Evan glanced at the maitre d', who had been trying to slip toward the kitchen. His voice cut the air like a blade. "Stay where you are." He raised his phone, the call timer still glowing. "The dispatcher has been listening to everything. Police are less than 3 minutes out." The maitre d' froze, color draining from his face. The ink stains on his cuff seemed to shout his guilt. The third man, his fingers bound in paper, hissed through clenched teeth. "You don't know what you've started." Evan leaned closer, his tone quiet but unyielding. "You're right. I know what I've finished." Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. The brute, chest heaving, made one last desperate move. "You think you're different from us. You think you're not broken." Evan's fist tightened, the red thread snapped, the spoon cracked under pressure, fragments glinting under chandelier light. For one terrifying moment, everyone thought he would strike, that the calm would shatter into violence. But he opened his hand. The broken spoon clinked softly onto the table. "The difference," he said, voice steady, "is that I know when to stop." The sirens grew louder. The crowd held its breath, and then the front doors burst open. 3 officers surged through the front entrance, tasers drawn, eyes sweeping the scene. 3 men in suits restrained by napkin knots and curling receipt paper, 1 man pinned to the carpet, a woman clutching a USB drive, and 30 diners holding phones aloft like glowing witnesses. The lead officer's voice boomed. "Someone want to explain what's happening here?" Nadia Lynn stepped forward, holding the USB high. "I'm Nadia Lynn, investigative journalist with Metro Weekly. These men attempted to steal evidence tied to a federal corruption case. This man," she gestured toward Evan, "prevented it." The officer's gaze flicked to Evan. "Name, Evan Hale," Nadia supplied before he could answer. Recognition passed over the officer's face. "Gray line?" Evan exhaled. "Tired. Former instructor. Current father." From across the room, Lily's small voice rang clear as a bell. "That's my daddy." The tension cracked. Applause rippled. First hesitant, then thunderous. Phones captured every angle. The red thread snapped on Evan's wrist. The broken spoon at his feet. The child's declaration cutting through corruption like sunlight through smoke. By the next morning, the video had been viewed 40 million times. Hashtags trended worldwide. Wrong table, wrong day. Calm first dad. Paper crane justice. The meme makers were relentless. When you threaten a woman and accidentally wake up John Wick's maintenance guy. Plot twist. The repairman maintained your whole operation. Ravenfield Holdings stock plummeted within hours. Their executives scrambled to deny involvement, but Nadia's expose hit the internet like a hammer. Financial records, safety violations, bribes to city inspectors and fire marshals. 17 indictments followed. The restaurant itself wasn't spared. The maitre d' confessed to accepting bribes in exchange for providing private space away from cameras. Yelp reviews tanked overnight. Atmosphere 2.5. Management allows assault. Would not recommend unless you like federal crimes with dessert. Meanwhile, Evan declined every interview request. CNN, BBC, late-night hosts. He told Lily the same thing every morning as she slid a paper crane into his pocket. "I'm not a TV person. I'm a fixing things person." The real victory was quieter. Ravenfield's properties were seized. The boarding house where Sarah had died was condemned and torn down. A memorial garden would be planted on the site. Evan stood at the fence with Lily, her hand wrapped in his. "Is Mommy's place going to be pretty now?" she asked softly. "Yeah," he said, voice catching. "It's going to be safe and pretty." Job offers rolled in. Security firms, diplomatic services, private investigation agencies. Everyone wanted the man who neutralized 3 professionals with nothing but napkins and receipt paper. Meridian Security offered 6 figures. Benefits. Prestige. "Can I work part-time?" Evan asked. "Part-time?" The recruiter blinked. "I pick Lily up from school every day. No weekends. No travel longer than 8 hours. The recruiter hesitated. "That's very specific." "That's my life," Evan replied. He chose consulting instead. Safety assessments. De-escalation training for restaurants and hotels. Flexible hours. Good pay. Work that mattered. Ironically, his first client was the Grand Orpheus itself. When he walked back in 3 weeks later, clipboard under his arm, and a new red thread tied around his wrist, the new manager greeted him nervously. "Mr. Hale, thank you for coming. We know this must feel strange. It's just work," he said gently. "Let's make this place safer." And they did. Exits cleared. Sprinklers tested. Panic buttons at every table. Staff trained to recognize distress. Cameras repositioned. The calm first protocol adopted. Within a month, the Orpheus had not only recovered, but flourished. Rebranded as the restaurant where heroes are born. The true test came one quiet Tuesday. A young server approached Evan, eyes wide. "Mr. Hale, there's a man at table 9. He won't leave a woman alone. She's asked him twice." Evan set down his clipboard. "What's the protocol?" "Calm first," the server recited. "Notify management. Activate the panic button. Document everything. And keep the guests safe." "Perfect. Do it." The server did. The man was removed quickly. Quietly. No live streams. No spectacle. Just professionalism. That night, Evan returned home. Lily was waiting with homework spread across the table. She had folded a crane from the front page of the newspaper, the one showing Evan, the red thread and the USB drive wrapped together. "For tomorrow, Daddy," she said, slipping it into his pocket. Weeks later, in the marble halls of federal court, Nadia Lynn stood at a podium beside the U.S. attorney, announcing Ravenfield's final indictments: conspiracy, bribery, criminal negligence leading to death. Executives who had built empires on unsafe housing were sentenced to years behind bars. Evan didn't sit with the press or stand at the podium. He sat in the back row with Lily, both dressed simply. They hadn't come for cameras. They came for closure. When Nadia finished, she called Evan forward. He didn't speak. Instead, he untied the red thread Lily had tied that morning and wrapped it gently around the black USB drive that had ignited everything. Then he placed one of Lily's paper cranes on top. Red thread, white crane, black drive. The symbolism was unmistakable. Protection around truth, with hope perched above. Cameras clicked like whispers of prayer. Evan stepped back. Lily's voice rang out, small but fierce. My daddy doesn't need to talk. He already said everything with his hands. The gallery fell silent, then erupted into applause. That image, the thread, the crane, the drive spread farther than any headline. Back home, as Evan tucked Lily into bed, she yawned and whispered, "Tomorrow you'll fix more things, right?" He smiled, brushing her hair back. "That's what we do, sweetheart. We fix things." And as the lamp clicked off, the red thread caught the hallway light. A reminder that some repairs needed toolboxes, but others required only courage, timing, and the will to say, when it mattered most, wrong table, wrong day. The photo of the red thread wrapped around the black USB drive with Lily's white paper crane perched on top became the single image everyone remembered. It spread across timelines and news feeds, with captions like courage in silence, and truth tied with hope. Back at home that night, Evan placed his jacket on the chair and found another crane waiting on his nightstand. Lily had folded it from the business section of the morning paper, the one that showed their hands together in court for tomorrow, Daddy. She whispered in the dark, in case something else needs fixing. Evan smiled and slid the crane into his pocket. The new red thread on his wrist glimmered faintly as he turned off her lamp. Tomorrow would bring more service calls, more broken doors and fire alarms that nobody else noticed. But tonight, he had repaired something greater than machinery. He had reminded the world that even ordinary hands could stop injustice. Sometimes the most important tools weren't in a toolbox. They were patience, courage, and the strength to say wrong table, wrong day at the right moment. When did you feel the shiver down your spine? When Evan whispered wrong table, wrong day, or when Lily's paper crane landed on the evidence? Comment below and subscribe to Hero Dad Stories for more tales, where everyday people rise to extraordinary courage.